Welcome GRD132 Typography, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about readability since that was in our chapter for chapter 4 in the Exploring Typography book, and I just wanted to give you an example. I had this laying around. I took a picture of the back of the box of Quaker Oatmeal Squares. It's a very cool design. Check out this design. It's got this cool graphic of these oatmeal squares creating a nice diagonal, creating some nice flow. We got a cropped off version of one of the oatmeal squares there, so that's cropped off. It leads your eye down here. There's crumbs down here. There's a spoon going across. It's cropped off. It's got a little touch of red in it with some strawberries. Centered in the middle, right above that, is this made with Quaker oats in kind of a subdued color. We have this blue bar on the bottom in this kind of navy blue color. It looks like that web page almost, with kind of the four icons on the bottom. Very modern looking. And then in the middle we have this cool text. It's kind of a sans serif, more of a condensed version. We have, for delicious start to your morning, it's hard to beat a bowl of Quaker Oatmeal Squares. We got this block of text, and it's all in nice kind of rectangles. We have a block, we have a block, we have a block, we have a block. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks here. They look very cool. Nice margin on either side. It looks really neat. Now let's try to read it. Now, I know you don't want me to read this to you, but I'm going to start reading it. For a delicious start to your morning, and I'm going to want you to do that too. For a delicious start to your morning, it's hard to beat a bowl of Quaker Oatmeal Squares. And then it says, they're made with whole grains and are a good source of fiber when enjoyed with half cup milk. Quaker Oatmeal Squares. I'm already tired of reading it. You know why I'm tired of reading it? Because it's hard to read. Because I'm looking at all these caps. I'm looking at these words here that are condensed words, a lot of vertical lines, and there's big spaces in between. The word spacing has been jacked up here for some reason, I guess to make it straight on either side. This is an example of using the text to make it look good rather than make it be readable. I think I talked about the gluten-free package, and I said about the text on the back. They don't really want you to read it. It's just there for decoration. And so is this. This looks cool. It makes for a cool design, but it's really hard to read. If you kind of zoom back a little bit, if you blur your eyes, it's a lot of vertical lines. That's what we were trying to say about sans serif fonts, particularly condensed ones. It's a lot of vertical lines. If you look at all the letter forms, there's a lot of vertical lines here. A lot of 1s and L's and things like that. Everything's very vertical. And especially when you start looking at capital letters, it's all vertical type letters. All the letters have very vertical strokes in them as you go through it. There's not a lot of flow from one word to the other. There's not a lot of meandering along from one line to the next. It's very geometric, very rigid, just blocks that we're looking at, and it's not very nice to read. Now, could you read the back of a box like this? Yes. Would you want to read a book like this? No. There's no way you'd want to read anything in any length like this. If you start to read this, it gets very fatiguing because of the big spaces, because of the condensed font, and because it's just hard to move from one word to the next. Now, how can I prove to you that that's the case and you're not just taking my word for it? Well, I had nothing else to do, so I retyped this stuff on the box, and what I did is I just put a kind of a covering over this. So I put new text, and I made a rectangle basically the same color, just to kind of give you the idea. But now I'm going to read it. And what I did was I took the same text and I put this in an upper lowercase instead of all caps, and I put this in upper lowercase and all caps, and I just put it in a blue. I didn't have to. I could have left it black, but I just matched the dark blue color a little bit. And for delicious start to your morning, see, now it reads nicer. The up and down of upper and lowercase makes your eye flow over this a little bit better. You get more movement when you read it. And same thing with this stuff in the middle. It's hard to beat a bowl of Quaker Oatmeal Squares. It's nice to read this. It's in a nice, readable serif font. Your eyes flow up and down and they go across instead of all those vertical lines. And since this is bigger, it's a bigger section of text. It's like a headline. I tightened the leading on it, so the leading's tighter, so it works as one unit. So everything is kind of a little more working together instead of spread out. It's easier to read, body copy when it's a little more spread out, but headlines, you want to keep them together. So the leading here, the line spacing, is tightened up a little, so it all works as one unit, and it's just centered instead of everything kind of justified right and left, which isn't a good way to read. So if I read this down here, they're made with whole grains and are a good source of fiber when enjoyed with half cup milk, Quaker Oatmeal Squares. I'm reading it faster because I don't have those big blocks of white white in between. I don't have the even justification on the right side, which makes it harder to find your place to get to the next line. Ragged right makes it easier to find the next line, and I know we read about that in the reading, but I just wanted to show you. And you could debate this. You could say, well, no, I don't think that's true, but I think looking at this, I think sometimes just doing it, looking at it, this is much more readable. If you look at a book and you'd want to read it, you'd want to read it like this. You would not want to read it in a condensed font with big spaces between the words like this. Let me show you this again. And that's what it looked like. This is just really hard to read like that. A lot of vertical strokes that you're seeing prevents your eye from moving laterally across each line. And these lines here at the end, with everything being even at the end, makes it harder to go back and find where you're at. Now again, it's only a little block. It's only 4 lines of text, but if you had, 10 lines of text, this would be very hard to read. But it looks cool. It looks good. You get this nice block, you got this block, you got that block. It looks cool, and that's the whole point. It's not meant to be readable. What I'd like you to do for your discussion is find something you have around the house. It could be printed, it could be on a label, it could be on the back of a box, it could be anything. It could be a magazine, it could be a book or anything. Find something that you think is not very readable that could be made more readable. Because that's something you don't think about all the time. You don't think about being readable. I can look at this and say it's a nice design and it looks cool, but it's not readable. That's one of the things that you want to focus on, is always make sure it's readable first when you're working with typography. It's very important. So see if you could find something around your house somewhere that you could find that's very hard to read. Snap a picture of it, whatever you want to do, and see if you can just upload it to your discussion.